Well, a lot of my friends at the time, they was getting life in prison. I didn't want to change my son's life by the decisions I made in my life. I never wanted my son to see me in prison or come to visit me in prison. So I had to make a change. And I remember I had to go to court one day, and the judge told me, say, hey, if I ever see you again, you're going to be doing life. And I told the Lord, I said, Lord, as you get me out of this, I would never go back. And just like a lot of people, I lied. I went back.
From Two Comma Media, it's Give 'em the Business, a show about Black entrepreneurs and business leaders sharing their stories of adversity and success. I'm Troy Evans, and on today's show, my guest is Darnell Lee, founder of W&T Travel Services. When people think of personal transportation services, they often think of companies like Uber and Lyft. But before these companies became household names, one enterprising entrepreneur had the blueprint to spin transportation into a multi-million-dollar business. Darnell Lee grew up in the hustle and bustle of Washington, D.C., but before he could become a transportation icon, he had to navigate the nuances of a large family.
I grew up one of 13 children. I'm the knee baby, next to the baby. My mom and dad was disciplinaries. They instilled in us at a young age values and honor and discipline and respect. And the thing about it was that a lot of kids wanted to be like Mike growing up. I wanted to be like my dad. My dad was my hero. You know, what my father did with us, my father made sure that he raised men. We was like the military, where we had to, yes, sir, no, sir. And I look at people now and they say, oh, that's the old slavery mentality. But, you know, it was just the way that he raised us to make sure that we gave respect. In order to give respect, you got to give respect. And, you know, when being raised in Washington, D.C., there was a lot going on back in that day. I grew up under Marion in the summer programs, getting summer jobs. And even at an early age, I was running around with little grocery carts, pulling people bags, shoveling snow, making extra money. So I had the entrepreneur spirit at an early age because of the fact that my father and mom gave us what we needed, not what we wanted. And we had to go out and do it the old-fashioned way. We had to earn it, and that's where we are today.
And so with 12 brothers and sisters, and you being the second youngest, I imagine that there was maybe a lot of competition, or you needed to fight for some recognition and whatnot. Is that correct?
That's true. We was like ring around roses, so we had to walk around the sheds, and the first one sat down 8. So I was just joking. No, we had our own basketball team, our own boxing team. We had our own football team. We was known as the Lee Boys, so they knew that when the Lee Boys came out that we had our own teams and everything already formed. And a lot of the brothers and sisters were older, so they had moved out of the house and made room for the younger generation to come in. But, you know, we had a great time growing up under the 13 of us. One of my sisters passed away before I was born, so we actually grew up with 12, but total it was 13 in our family.
And when you came up, D.C. was still Chocolate City back then. Did you see a lot of positive Black role models besides your dad?
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of Black role models growing up. Back in my day, it was limited, but we had some. There was football coaches, Mr. Wise, there was Mr. Bucky at Number 2 Boys Club. Even Black role model men was in the churches that didn't have no names, but they was names to us that was very influential to us. They helped us grow up, that guided us. Even our pastors was men of the cloth that was real tradesmen, and it taught us how, you know, to make things right, how things was wrong, make sure that we did the right things. So we had a lot of mentors and role models that we looked up to. They didn't have the names and recognitions that they do today, but they was powerful Black men that was in the community working with kids.
And so I also imagine with so many brothers and sisters, your parents probably had a difficult time, although they had you in that military type discipline scenario. They probably had a difficult time keeping their eye on all of you all at the same time. Did you find that there were some temptations or some troubles that might have taking you in a direction that you wouldn't want your children to go in.
Well, that's true. One thing about my parents, when the street light came on in D.C., we was in the house. My father said it one time. He tell you one time only, and if you didn't do it, then it was consequences. I think in today's society, there's not consequences that's going on. You got to tell a kid 2 or 3 times what to do. We never heard that before, because once my mom and dad told us one time, it was done. There was a lot of temptations out there, but because we was grounded and rooted at an early age, we stayed true to our faith as well as with our upbringing by our parents.
Yeah, I find that, I've got little kids. I find that I'm always in search of, and I ask, the people that I have conversations with, how do you instill that sense of struggle that actually makes you be more creative, makes you be more imaginative, makes you have a better work ethic, when in fact your kids don't have to struggle as much, now, because when we grew up, like you said, there wasn't that asking 2 or 3 times or 4 times or what have you. It was simply you understood that once it was asked once, you needed to follow through. But nowadays, it's like you said, it's not as much of that
Right.
as that discipline. You find that to be the case?
I hear it all the time. I'm going to make sure my kids don't struggle. We should want our kids to struggle, because then they have the same values that we have, with the fact they know to do, how to do without, how to earn it, and what to do with it when they get it, and how to keep it. Because so many kids get stuff and they don't know the trended value of it. They just throw it away.
Yeah, the lessons are in the struggle.
It is.
For sure.
It is. My pastor preached one day, Pastor John K. Jenkins, the First Baptist Church of Glen Island in Maryland, a significant of struggling. And when you struggle, you have a more appreciation of the values of coming out of that struggle to earn it, to get where you are. And then you can look back and look what you accomplished through the struggle. Although it was a mess, but there was a message in the mess that you learned from, and you can appreciate it more.
So you mentioned that you had a spirit of hustle in you when you were young, and you had some minor entrepreneur endeavors in order to earn some extra income and whatnot. When did you first start to think, maybe I might want to be a businessman, or was that something that came a little bit later?
Well, it came a little later. It's just the fact that the way we was raised, that my father wanted us to see was get out there. He had this motto: if he had to work, everybody in the house had to work. And he didn't care what the age limit was. So we had to go out, shovel snow. We had to newspaper routes, grocery carts, and that nature. Then as I got in high school, I became a carpenter, and I started forming my own construction company and doing renovations. And then when I got out of high school, you said some of the temptation changed. I got into the streets. I started running with different people. The things that I did learn as a child, as I got older, I put them to the side. It was one day when the fact I was working construction and I got laid off. And I had a family. And I knew people that was out on the street, and I needed to make some quick money. And I went to a friend of mine and said, hey, man, I need to make some money. And I made a couple of transactions. And next thing you know, I became him. And then I became somebody that I didn't know. I was afraid of myself. I used to wake up every morning mad at the world, because that was the life I was living. Because now I was in the streets. I had teams out there working for me, and I became a man of the night.
So you just said a mouthful, so we're going to have to go back through that in a little bit more detail.
Yes, sir.
So first thing that was really interesting to me that you mentioned was that you became interested in and learned the skill and trade of carpentry.
That's correct.
That stood out to me, because I find that we're not bringing about a generation of skilled individuals nowadays. What garnered your interest in carpentry? And tell me about how you went from high school and leveraged that skill.
Well, I'd like to give a praise to my teacher, Miss Thompson. In the 8th grade, I was at Shaw Junior High School in Washington, D.C., and she said to us, the world is going to change, and you're going to need a degree to work anywhere you go. And she said, you ought to start thinking about trade schools. So there was a lot of vocational high schools in Washington, D.C., so my brothers, they went to Cardozo High School, McKinley Tech, and Dunbar High School in D.C., and I wanted to do something different. So I went to a vocational high school called Phelps Vocational High School where I took up carpentry. As a kid, my mother was dragged us to church so much. Jesus was a carpenter. I wanted to be like Jesus, and I wanted to be a carpenter. So I followed my dreams, and I went to vocational high school where I graduated top of my class at Phelps. And from there, I went into the construction industry. So soon from out of high school, I remember I was on the X2 bus going downtown D.C., and I was laughing at the construction workers because it was real cold. I said, man, they crazy being out there. And the next following year after high school, I was out there doing the construction work. And I did a 4-year apprenticeship program. After the 4-year apprenticeship program, I went into 2 years and got my master license. And I've been doing carpentry work for over 30-some-odd years. Carpentry has always been a trade. I've made more money on the side than working construction than I was working a regular job. But during them times when you work in construction, you know, you have a season where you get laid off. So at that particular time, I got laid off. And my son, Darnell Jr., was just born. And I wasn't going back home, so I was determined to stay out on my own, and I turned to the streets.
And so about how old were you when your son was born?
21.
All right, so Darnell Jr. was born when you were 21. You're doing well enough as a carpenter and earning a living and earning some income and whatnot, which, again, I find fascinating because we were pushed this go to college, get a 4-year degree, get a 4-year degree, get a 4-year degree. And now I find myself always having to contact and reach out to skilled individuals, be it carpenters or plumbers or cameramen or audio technicians or something. And I see the value of that. And I worked in youth services for a long time. And we studied how in Europe they have very vast apprenticeship programs and what have you. And they really put a lot of emphasis on making sure that individuals have skills. So you've developed this skill that has paid you dividends for all of your life, but it was seasonal at times and not consistent.
That's true.
You had the pressure of a young mouth to feed and make sure that no one's going hungry, and that responsibility. So you do, as we do sometimes, and you look for the quick opportunity to make some money and put some money out on the streets. Tell me a little bit more about that phase of your life.
Yeah, as I stated, I was laid off. I didn't want to go back home, and made some phone calls and made some flips, and I became the person that I was calling. I became that person who was in the streets of Washington, D.C. I always kept a job because the job would be my personal conscience if I ever got locked up, and I always had lawyers or retainers. And I made good money in the streets, and I made more than I ever would work, but I always kept a job because my first love was carpentry. And I love doing what I do, and I love what I do. And so one offset the other. It's just the fact that at nighttime, I became a different person, and during the daytime, I was a construction worker.
Mm-hmm. And how long was that phase in your life?
About 15 years.
So that was a long phase.
It was a long phase. It was a good phase, too.
Yeah. Was it the money?
After a while, it wasn't about the money. It was just the fact that it was just the hustle and grind. Mm-hmm. It was just going from one entrepreneur to another entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. I mean, just because a lot of people don't understand, you're still running a Fortune 500 business. Mm-hmm. You still are CEO of that company. And or just like I was the CEO of the carpentry company, I was the CEO of this company as well.
So that opportunity lasted for a good bit of your 20s and into your 30s. What made you want to switch gears and take a different direction from a how you earn your living standpoint?
Well, a lot of my friends at the time, they was getting life in prison. I didn't want to change my son's life by the decisions I made in my life. I never wanted my son to see me in prison or come to visit me in prison. So I had to make a change. And I remember I had to go to court one day, and the judge told me, say, hey, if I ever see you again, you're going to be doing life. But I was sending life papers to my house. And I told the Lord, I said, Lord, did you get me out of this? I would never go back. And just like a lot of people, I lied. I went back. I went to a skating rink one night, and police came into the bathroom. It was like a goon squad. One of the guys came in there. He was a former drug dealer, and he had cocaine all on him, and he was sniffing it. And so we went in the bathroom. They pushed everybody against the wall. And I had something on me, but the way I kept mine is that you would never see it. And they was about a centimeter from reaching where I kept my drugs at. So when I walked out of the skating ring, I just gave everything away. And I fell on my knees, and that Sunday, it was on a Saturday, that Sunday, I went to church and I gave my life back to Christ. And from there, I've been on fire for the Lord ever since.
So you're in your 30s. You've decided to give your life back to Christ.
That's correct.
And so what does that look like from an employment standpoint? What are you doing now on your full-time job now that you've given up the streets?
Well, I left carpentry, and then I started working for a company called Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, Metro, where I was driving the bus and trains for Ramada. And from there, I drove for them for almost 10 years, the bus and trains. And I also started doing training. I love training students that come in, just like when I came in. Someone trained me, and I love they call it LPI, line platform instructor and training instructor. So I love doing that. And from there, I was going up to Atlantic City because I also worked part-time with another company driving motor coaches. And one of the guys asked me, he said, "Hey, man, when you going to start your own company?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, you're very articulate, you're very bright. He said, you dress well." He said, "You know what you're doing." He said, "You should start your own company." And I never thought about it. And one day my pastor was having a workshop on entrepreneurship. And I started thinking about it more and more. So, you know what, maybe I should start my company.
After the break, can Darnell leave the lure of streets behind for good and successfully conquer the world of transportation? I'm Troy Evans, and you're listening to Give 'Em the Business. Give 'Em the Business is sponsored by Oasis Vacations. You deserve the luxury vacation of your dreams. Don't leave your travel accommodations to chance, and take the worry out of your next destination vacation. Be well traveled and visit vacationwithoasis.com. Give 'Em the Business is sponsored by The Funnel Creative. The Funnel Creative's mission is to empower Black crew and content creators to bring your visual production to life. To learn more, visit us at thefunnelcreative.com. Give 'Em the Business is sponsored by LRVP Investment Fund. Stop settling for mediocre returns and exorbitant fees on your investment. Take control of your financial future by investing in luxury vacation homes. Reduce your tax burden, earn double-digit returns, and enjoy luxury vacations with your family. To learn more, visit lrvpfund.com. We're talking with Darnell Lee, founder of W&T Transportation Services. Darnell had become a master of street hustling, but needed to tackle a new endeavor if he was going to live a life that his son would be proud of. First, he had to learn how to launch a startup.
Before I started my company, I called 20 companies and wanted to meet with the owners and ask them the do's and don'ts of running a business. Out of the 20 companies I called, 10 of them met with me, and they gave me, the policy procedures and do's and don'ts of what's to start the company. But out of the other 10 companies that didn't meet with me, they currently work for me now because they were so afraid of me being their competitor, they didn't want to talk to me. Mm-hmm. But, in order to, the art of war, you got to use your competitors and your enemies to bring them together. So the fact that you guys can work together and collaborate, regardless of what the situation and circumstances, it's about bringing us together and working together. So the value that I learned at Metro was tremendously. I learned how to run an operation. I learned about being on time. I learned about customer services. I learned about the maintenance. I learned about the revenue stream. I learned so much at Metro where I transitioned all that knowledge I learned from them and started my own company. And in the same format that Metro taught me, I'm running my company the same way: customer service, safety. Those are the main two things that we keep. And our customer service and our clients are our number one pet peeve. And if you don't have that in your repertoire, you really just out there making money. Because if you're not there serving your company, serving your people that's there, you really not having fun out there doing what you're doing.
So I've learned a lot from the conversations I've had with entrepreneurs, and I've seen a lot of different ways of starting companies. Mm-hmm. But one of the ones that seems to be more successful is when someone really soaks up the information and the skills and what have you on someone else's dollar, another company's dollar, right?
Right.
Then they become an expert in that field, and that's what allows them to start their company on a very successful footing versus having to learn on their own dollar.
That's true.
Do you recommend that strategy to entrepreneurs?
Of course. Why reinvent the wheel? Just listen to the people that you are talking to that help you grow. Because in this industry, no matter how much you think you know, there's more to learn.
You're given the thought of starting your own company after being in it for at least 10 years.
Correct.
So if I'm doing my math right, you're in your late 30s, early 40s before you even have the inclination of starting your own company.
Correct.
Before you take that leap of faith, what are you thinking? What concerns you? What doubt do you have in regards to, if I'm gonna go out on my own, what do I need to make sure is lined up?
A lot of us had that Frankie fear. We are our worst enemies. We put so much doubt before we get started. And a lot of times we just don't walk out on faith. We think about all the negativities instead of the positivity that can come from it. And you gotta think about both. But yet, sometimes we talk ourselves out of something. And what I did, like I said, I spoke with those 20 individuals. During that time, it was an administrator named Wayne Curry in D.C., said that they couldn't find African Americans. So I wanted to make sure I went and got all my certifications first. Before I even started my business, but then I went and got all the certifications that I needed. So that the fact they would never say, we couldn't find you. And so then I went on, knocked on my congressmen, my senators, my city councilmen, my school board. I went and knocked on all their doors, and I took my capability statement and introduced myself, who I am. And then after I sat down and met with them, I just be like, my wife said I stalked her when I first met her. I called and word the hell out you. Hey, I'm Darnell Lee. I came to your office. I met with you, just doing a follow-up. A lot of people don't do follow-up. I follow up all the time. I make sure that, hey, when I leave your office, you know who I am. And then, just like I did with Metro, when I was worrying them to death, they said, come on down here and take this application. We got a job for you. They was calling me back, Mr. Lee, we got something that you might want to look at. And by me being persistent, I became very successful, because the only time I believe in no is when a woman tell you no. But I'm going to call you. I'm going to knock on your door. I'm going to make sure that if there's an IDIQ or something out there that I need, that I'm coming to get it.
Love that. And so you decided to start your own business, and this is W&T Travel Services that you started?
Yes, sir. W&T Travel Services.
And so what was your first purchase? Was it the vehicles?
I was working with Metro at the time, and I had just bought a brand new Mercedes-Benz coupe. And I went to a men's conference that my pastor was teaching on about legacy as well as entrepreneurship. And the Bible said a good man should leave a heritage for his children. So I always want to honor my mother and father in life, and their death. I named the company after them. So the W is for my father, William, and the T is for my mother, Teola. And I took the car back to the dealership. I lost about $13,000 in value. But I had a vision, goal, and purpose. And I got online, I looked in Houston, Texas, and I bought my first van. And I went down there and bought the van, bought it back. On my way through Atlanta, my younger brother, at the time, he still lived in Atlanta. I was living in D.C., so I went back home, and I found another van. So I bought two vans for less than $30,000, but that same one van cost $30,000 in D.C. Mm-hmm. And so I traded my car in and got rid of it, and I started my company with those two vans. I grew from two vans to 125 vehicles in my fleet. I went from one employee to over 300 employees.
So you went from two vans to 125 vehicles.
That's correct.
and from 1 employee to over 300 employees.
Yes, sir.
That's a lot had to been happening during that time. So let's start back. So you got your two vehicles. I'm assuming you're doing the driving in the beginning.
I was doing everything. And then I called Darnell Jr. I called him from North Carolina, and he came back home.
So you got your son involved?
Got my son involved. And at that time, he had his fiancée. So they was doing the administrative part.
And so Darnell comes back, helps you out with the business. Where are you getting your customers from? Who is your clientele?
Well, the customers was the clientele that I went and met with. Remember I said I met with the 20 companies, but I only met with 10. I became a subcontractor to them.
Gotcha.
And also was taking my white paper, going to government official meetings. In Prince George's County, Maryland, they had a lot of meetings where you go in to meet with the government officials, and I was going down to a lot of the universities and colleges. I was meeting with them. I would meet with anybody that had an opportunity for me to grow my business. And so I went down to district. I went down to the district government, federal government, state municipalities. So I was just going and making meetings with individuals so the fact that I can enhance my company.
And what do you think you did in revenue that first year of your business?
Well, the first year I started, like I said, I waited to get all my certification. So I started my business August 23rd, 2006. And I stayed dormant till May 1st of 2007. So from 2007 to December 2007, I made $250,000.
That's not a bad first year.
It was okay. It was a good year.
Right.
But then in 2008, I made $6.2 million.
Okay, so you're going to have to break that down because you went from $250,000 in revenue.
Correct.
To 6.8 in the year that the economy collapsed. So tell me how that happened.
Well, I came in when President Obama got elected.
Okay.
And I went into the 8A program. The 8A program,
great program,
is for minority businesses. And once I got into the 8A program, my first government contract was 5 years, $35 million.
Wow.
And then as I grew my business, I started adding on. And then I won $10 million, $15 million, $20 million dollar contracts. And then the first year I went, like I said, I made $250,000. Then I went to 6.2. But in my third year, I went to over $10 million.
And that was primarily from federal contracts in the 8A program?
Yes, sir, from the federal government contract, and as well as being in the commercial industry, too. Because I was like Uber before Uber came out, whereas the fact that I didn't have any motor coaches, but I would connect people who had motor coaches with some of the clients that I was recruiting. Mm-hmm. So, and I was still getting a broker fee. Mm-hmm. So when Uber came out, I was doing Uber way before Uber got started.
And so I hear a lot of entrepreneurs say that sometimes those big contracts and getting money fairly early in the process can also be a downfall or a detriment if you can't scale your business up quick enough to meet the demands of the contract. Did you experience any of that or any obstacles that you had to overcome, or was it smooth sailing as you started getting those government contracts in?
Nothing was smooth sailing.
Okay.
I can tell you that. It's just that you never take on more than you can bear. You say undervalue, over-deliver, or under-deliver, overvalue. Whereas the fact that I knew what I can handle. So if I knew I couldn't handle an $80 or $100 million contract and I didn't have the manpower, the people, the resources, I would stay within my limit. And by that, what I mean is that I knew what I can handle at the time. I wouldn't try to go and get something that I couldn't handle. So for me, it was strategic growth and grind with the fact that I knew, because the government has a thing when you're working, as you move up the ladder, you have a thing called first right of refusal with employees. So every time I won a contract, I inherit those employees. So I didn't have to go out and get a lot of employees because they was already there. Now, we did have to backfill a lot of positions, but I did it strategically, and I made sure that whatever contract I went out of, I became like the military, where we look 18 months out before a contract would end, and I would plan, I would court that quota or that a contracting officer with the fact that he or she, I would meet with them and learn the contract. I had a contracting team that we would break down the contract what we needed, how much we needed, what we had, where we had to go in this. And then when we bidded on it, I knew exactly where I needed to go get the capital from, how much money we needed, what our payroll would look out. And that way, when we won the contract, everything was already in place.
And with 8A programs, you can normally stay in the program for
9 years.
9 years.
Yes.
And so if you got it in 2006, you're coming out around...
No, I started the business 2006.
2006.
I didn't get into the 8A program until 2009.
2009.
No, I'm sorry, 2008.
2008.
I came in when Obama got elected.
And so you got 9 years. So that means around 2017.
I graduated April 2nd.
Graduating.
Yeah, April 2nd.
You know that date?
Yes, sir. It's my graduation day, just like my birthday, right?
Were you concerned when you were getting ready to leave the program about how you were going to continue to get large government contracts and transition out of that program?
Well, there was a lot of myth going around, and it was some truth, whereas that a lot of times when you graduate out of the program, a lot of companies went bottom. That's why they said in your 5th and 6th year, you should be planning for your exit strategy, whether you're going to sell your business or whether you're going to graduate and keep the business. For me, I knew, learning from some of the people that's been in the industry, I had to position myself to flip my contracts. What I mean by that was that I knew that my contract was going to end after I graduated out of the 8A program. So I picked my successor. So you have to give them 2 years experience. So if I knew that Troy was coming into the 8A program, I would go vet Troy and say, Troy, hey, look, I know that you need a mentor, you need somebody to guide you as entrepreneurship. So in the Mentor Protege program, I would either put you in a Mentor Protege program or I would mentor you with the fact that you just got in the 8A program. You just happy to be there. And then you got a seasoned vet like me who can help you grow your business. So it's a great fit with the fact that now I take my expertise, train you and mentor you, and then I'll bring you on my contract so that the contracting officer and the government can see that, hey, now Troy has past performance. So the government would prefer you to have 2 years past performance. So I bring you on, get approval from the government, get that past performance, and then we flip the contract where you become the prime and I become the sub. So throughout my tenure, although I knew that I wouldn't be the prime anymore in certain contracts, I prepared to become the sub. I'm still making 49% of 49% of something is better than 100% of another.
Without a doubt.
So I just flipped the contracts.
Okay. Very smart. And oftentimes you find that sometimes entrepreneurs are not thinking that far down the road and preparing for some of those rough transitions and patches that need to happen. So
you know what I learned about that is that a lot of generations think 10 and 20 years ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And by my upbringing with my parents and being around a lot of entrepreneurs as well, I think 5 to 10 years of extra strategy, what it's going to look like 10 years from now, where I want to be in 10 years from now. So now I'm 8 years, going on 8 years removed from the 8A program, but it's like I never left because I know how to use that tool to my advantage.
And so what was or what is so far, because I know you're still going strong with it, what has been your peak revenue year in terms of W&T Transportation?
My peak, I think the highest was probably around 25 million, bringing in 25 million that year. And then we went down to 20, and then when COVID came, we went down to like 15. And then, you know, we ramping back up. So we back up to about 12 to 15 million a year.
Okay. And I noticed that also as entrepreneurs have some success, and the thing that got them there, the baby that they cultivated and grew into a successful company, also allows them to pursue some other endeavors.
Yes, sir.
And to expand their business horizons and what have you. And you also got into the entertainment space as well. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I was lucky to grow up under great leadership of a friend of mine named Russ Parr. Russ Parr worked for Radio 1 and TV 1, Urban 1. And Russ was doing a couple of filming movies in California. I went out to California and watched him do a movie called The Under Shepherd. And I watched behind the scenes, and Russ let me see what happened. And I was happy to see what happened. I was like, oh, man, this is something I want to get into. And then I partnered with Russ on 1 or 2 movies, and then I started partnering with other filmmakers and became executive producers on different films. And now I'm in training under a great guy now who's helping me get into promotions with. Now we're doing shows, gospel shows. We're doing R&B shows as well. So now I've got into the entertainment full. We're out there on the movies, and now we're doing shows as well.
And so do you find that pursuing those passions takes your eye off the ball at all with the transportation, or are you able to stay focused?
You know, it goes twofold, because most of the gospel artists, most of the R&B artists, most of the actors and everything use my service to come in when they come in town. So I use it as a fact to my advantage, because one, they have to be chauffeured around. They have to have transportation. I don't care what industry you in, corporate, movies, shows, whatever, you got to have transportation. So who better use your own service? And that's a part of the revenue that you can keep for yourself, and it works for you.
So you were able to blend the synergies between the
yes,
endeavors.
Sir. Yes,
okay.
Sir.
And you recently just were awarded a contract, correct?
Yes, sir. Another contract. I've been on it for 15 and a half years. Now I have another 5 years on it. We won it. By the time we finish it, it'd be worth almost $45 million over 5 years. That's just one contract. And this contract that I've been working on, by the time I leave in 5 years, we almost gross on one contract, almost $200 million.
Very nice.
Yes, sir. So I think in 20 years and $200 million, it's not bad.
Right. And so I know you're married now. When did you meet your wife?
I met my wife about 11 years, going on 11 years. This next year, 2025, would be 11 years.
What is unique about starting a relationship as an entrepreneur?
Well, the unique thing about it is that I get up every day, love what I do, and do what I love. And can't nobody take that away from me. The thing about my wife is that she was an entrepreneur as well. She was a real estate broker. She had her own brokerage firm. She worked with hedge funds, so she was very heavily in the, as far as in the housing industry. And the thing, I was just coming from a divorce, and I said, well, I don't have to worry about her taking my money because she got her own money. Mm-hmm. So it was very enlightening that, to bring in the two skill sets together. But the first thing when I first met her, I told her, I never want to work with you. Because I find that so many couples, including myself, when you in couple relationship, it works for a while, but there's no separation from church and state. Mm-hmm. Anything happening at the business, you taking it home. It's in the bedroom. I want to hear Luther. You talking about balance sheets and all like this. I don't need no balance sheet. I got other things on my mind, right? I want to balance something else.
Right.
So, but that's the thing you happen. I mean, but some couples may work out. Mm-hmm. It didn't work out for me, and I don't ever want to work with my spouse ever again. I just want to be husband, supporter.
Right.
I just want her to be my wife.
I hear some trauma in that statement. But
I went through hell through that.
Right.
And the divorce I went through is because of the fact that we couldn't separate business from pleasure. Mm-hmm. It was always business, 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 business. And, it gets to the point where you can't sleep and then you just lose that feeling for that person, is that I don't have a wife anymore. I got a business partner.
Right.
And the business partner take over the relationship, and you're like, man, I just don't like this partner no more.
Right.
And it goes both ways. I'm not saying she was at fault or I was at fault. It's just that we grew apart from each other, and there was no separation. And, like I said, some couples can work together. I couldn't. And I see so many couples like myself who break up because of the fact that it's too much. You got to have a separation. You go on vacation, what are you talking about? You go to church, what are you talking about? When you leave the church, what are you talking about? You go home with the kids, after you put them down, what are you talking about? Business. Mm-hmm. Everything is business, 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 business. When are you talk about you and her?
Right. So, when I listen to your story, which is fascinating, one thing that strikes me off the bat is that, at least to me, 2006 doesn't seem like that long ago for you to have had the level of success that you have had, right? You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts in under 20 years, right? That's extremely successful. And I've found and come to the conclusion that, a lot of people talk about there's no such thing as getting rich quick, which there's not, because there's a lot of process that happens on the way up to it. But once you figure it out, it does happen extremely quickly. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with you. It's just like you said, you have to figure it out. You have to find out what is that one thing that you're good with? And what was that one thing that you would do it for free? See, I love transportation and I love customer service. This is something, if I didn't get paid, I would do it for free. And I learned the most valuable thing that you can do is volunteer. I learned so much and gained so much in relationship by volunteering my time and giving where everybody wants to get paid for it. And you don't know how many people you're going to meet. Doors open up for you that just by volunteers. The things that you pray to God for, I need this, I need that. And you standing beside the person that you volunteer with, that they volunteering with you, and now y'all make a relationship. That's what you pray for. But if you never give back, how you gonna give? How you gonna get anything? Much is given, much is required. You have to give back in order to give. And I just think that for me, I love volunteering. I love giving my time. I love counseling people. I mentor a lot of people as well. I helped a lot of people become millionaires. So, for me, although I was a hellraiser and growing up in my 15 years that I told you about, I'm not saying I'm compensating it, but I just love giving back and helping people move along.
I do see that as a recurring theme with successful people, is that spirit of service and that spirit of giving back. In 20 years of business, what's still keeping you up at night?
What keeps me up at night is being broke, a failure. Customer service, making sure that my clients, my customers are taken care of, making sure the buses are going on time, making sure my staff is giving great customer services, because they're going to see my staff before they see me. And they are the ambassadors of the company. And if I'm not training and equipping them to do the right things, then I fail. And that will keep me up at night, making sure that I equip my staff and my team to make sure that they have the right equipment to serve the community. Jesus was a servant. And like I said, growing up in D.C. and as a child, that's all we heard of biblical principles. And I built my company on biblical principles, and I'm proud of that. And I continue to thrive off that. And I want to make sure that no matter how big you are, and we have clients from the outhouse to the White House, and soon to come to your house. Right. So we're gonna make sure that we give you that customer service, and the things that I grew up on, I instilled in my staff as well.
I often run into scenarios where I'm going to some business that I want to patronize, and one of the employees has closed it down early, or one of the employees is not actively soliciting my money, and I'm constantly thinking, the owner doesn't want this to be happening, right? The owner wants you to stay open until the stated hours. The owner wants you to go above and beyond, but there's a training mechanism or something that's missing there that prevents the delivery of excellent customer service. And I like to vote with my dollar, right? So, I may give someone a pass once, but I'm not going to continue to spend my money at an establishment that's not delivering excellent customer service. And all too frequently nowadays, it's missing. So that you being focused on that and having fear of that makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, as the owner of the company, how much time do you put in? I'm up like 20 hours a day. I sleep 4 hours. My staff tell you can call me 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm up. I go to bed 11:30, 12 o'clock. Because I'm up, because I'm concerned. When that first bus go out, I want to make sure that bus went out on time. If it did, why are we late? What's going on? What's the mechanism behind it? We got a replacement bus. So I want to already have things already ready for plan B. I hear a lot of people say, if you got a plan B, you ain't got plan A. That's what they believe. I believe that you always have a backup plan, because sometimes with mechanicals and machines, even men, we all fall. We're going to fall short. So you have to have a plan to make sure that if that bus goes out and it breaks down, what's my backup plan? I got to make sure that I got other operators ready to stand by. I got to make sure that we get the people where they want, because there's rules and laws in DOT, Department of Transportation, that we have to comply with. I can't have a bus on the highway more than an hour. So I got to make sure if something happened, I got a backup plan to get these people off the highway, or the buses are served. So I got to make sure that I do my due diligence as an owner to make sure I take care of my customers, who are my first love. And if I don't take care of them, they won't take care of me.
Right. So I've got just a few more questions before I ask you to give our listeners the business. But but one of the things that was also intriguing to me is that you mentioned that you've had, at peak, at least 300 employees. What is the most challenging aspect of having that many people that you are responsible for and that need to make the operation work?
You're going to need more time on the show. You got to remember you're dealing with 300 personalities. Everybody wants to be you. Everybody wants you to listen to them. And I can't be everywhere at the same time. So that's why I have great managers that we put in place, HR managers, my COO, and, project managers that we can come in as a team. We sit down and strategize. Every Monday we have our calls. We meet to make sure what's going on in the day-to-day operations. But with my employees, because they are my ambassadors, I want to make sure that they are satisfied, that they get what they need. And a lot of times we always say the customer's right. That's not true. The customer's not always right. But it's our job to make them feel that they're right. And we give them another opportunity to show them, hey, although you asking for this, have you thought about this? And, a lot of times, I give you an example. One day I was driving the bus and I picked up a passenger and they wanted me to do something outside the rules and regulations. And I told them, I have to check with the company, but sir, we can't do that. And while I was driving the bus, they called in on me and reported me. But he didn't know he was talking to the owner of the company.
Right.
And so when we got to our destination, he told me, he said, well, I was the one to let you know you reported me. I said, did you talk to Mr. Lee? No, I left him a message. I said, well, I'm quite sure he's going to get on me when I get back. Well, customers always lie. I mean, come on, they lie. They tell you things that they want to make things look better in their favor, when the fact that all you got to do as an owner of the company is stick to your morals, stick to things that you built your company with. And, sometimes you got to bend a little bit to make sure that, hey, you certifying your clients. But you got to also let your clients respect you as you respecting them.
So what are you looking forward to in the next 5 years? What are you most excited about?
I just started a cybersecurity company. I have 3 Secret Service agents. I got 2 CIA agents. I have some Microsoft executives, and I got little old me. And we're going to make this thing work. So we're in cybersecurity.
You just started a cybersecurity. So in other words, I'm going to have you back for another episode of Giving the Business where you're giving us a different perspective, set of lessons from that.
Yes, sir.
How recently is that company?
The company started about a year ago. Okay. And right now we in the process of signing our first contract. Okay. And some of the agents that's currently working together are now ready to retire from the Secret Service. And are you planning on leveraging the 8A program for that company as well? Some secrets are. Some things I can say and some things they got to tune into to the next show, right? Okay. So before we get out of here, I always ask successful entrepreneurs as yourself to give our listeners the business. What are the things that you want to make sure the next generation of entrepreneurs knows and learns before they take that step into entrepreneurship? And how would you want them to be equipped to be successful as you have been? That's a very good question. The first thing I would say is your honor, integrity. A man or a woman with no integrity is a person I don't even want to be around. Your honor, your integrity, mean what you say what you mean. Don't flip-flop. And don't let anyone take you away from your dream and your passion. Learn what your goals. I tell people all the time, you have to have your vision, your purpose, your goal, your strategy, your structure, your service, and that cherry on top is your technique. What separates you from everybody else? You never know how far you can go until you try. And if you gotta only believe. And if you don't believe it, who will?
I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
It has been a pleasure getting to know you, and I wish you all the success.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate you. Thanks a lot. Much success in your endeavors moving forward.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you as well.
That's Darnell Lee, founder of W&T Travel Services. If you want to learn more about the Black entrepreneurs and business leaders who have made an impact, make sure to subscribe to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, make sure to follow us on social media at Give 'em the Business Podcast. And if you want to send me a message, you can find me at I am Troy D. Evans. Give 'em the Business is produced by 2 Comma Media. Thanks for listening, and remember to Troy harder.